Give me a moment. Marcy asks, it took a huge sack of cash from a billionaire mogul. Twitter has been exposed for its censorship. It's a selective banning, manipulating follower numbers to prop up leftist blue check marks, and programming its algorithm to favor lockstep thought. It took major complaints from people all around for the Biden Department of Justice to stop the so called Ministry of Truth, or at least delay it. Still, censorship and internet electioneering are still prominent on Facebook, major media outlets, and other social media. What can we as citizens and free thinkers do to keep fighting such practices within social and mainstream media and hold the informational manipulators accountable?
So people tend to forget this is not the first attempt of the government to actually invoke 1984 type restrictions. Some of us are old enough to remember something called the Fairness Doctrine. Y'all remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that was going to be the government's balancing. Oh, yeah, we're going to balance political speech. Like, oh, yeah. Oh, sure you are. And so one of the things Reagan did is got rid of it. So we have tended to not pay attention to where this is all going. But I'm just telling you, this is not the first rodeo we've all seen regarding this issue. And I think it's very apparent that there's going to be some more pushes in this area. So Twitter was the ultimate expression of quote unquote fairness, because they were those who haven't watched. I encourage you to go watch the Project Veritas video of one of the seniors talking about that they're all communist as F, and that they don't care about profitability. They know they're not profitable because they are out to do what they believe is right, and they will censor people. They will tell people they're doing everything fairly, but they're obviously trying to do all the things they can to promote a certain, I would say, Marxist theory of how the world should work. And so that's why you see this massive manipulation. The report, was it yesterday, Chris? Joe Biden has less than half of the 20 million followers that they actually say he does.
Absolutely. That was
Sure.
that was his Twitter account. It
Yeah.
was half of the 22 million, or around half of the 22 million. That's a deliberate propping up of
Yeah.
ideology. So it leads me to wonder how many of these cat lady bloggers, I shouldn't say cat lady because I know a lot of people who own a lot of cats and aren't like that.
I know a few cat ladies are pretty cool.
Right, stereotypical cat lady bloggers, the nasty ones who are out there trying to, the Taylor Lorenzes of the world. I'd like to know how their followings are propped up by Twitter, and I believe that's what Elon Musk wants to know. We have these abject bloggers from all around, or kind of fringe editorialists who seem to be the most popular people on Twitter and social media. But one wonders
Well,
if they're being propped up just as much as the president and other similar outlets.
well, by the way, this connects back to the fairness doctrine, because the left used to shoot themselves in the foot a lot in the days of the fairness doctrine. People don't remember that unless they're of a certain age. But what would happen is you would have more or less of a balanced political debate, and then some guy would represent, let's say, the Republican side of things and say something on the radio. So they had to balance it. They'd put on, and they'd have the craziest left-wing loon you could imagine, who would espouse such insanity that it was actually, they lost ground by having that guy come on. So that used to happen a lot.
That's all.
But Jay, my issue is not the loons, because we know they're there. The issue is the government determining what needs to be balanced. That's my issue. And,
No, for sure.
It's
so
too much
to-
power for the government
right.
to handle.
But to Chris's point, look, as you all know, last time I checked, I'm still suspended from Twitter, and I was suspended for trolling Ray Epps, basically saying, "Hey, this guy was a plant at the 6th January thing," and defending myself against the likes of the trolls, basically going back at them as vigorously as they went at me, and I got him suspended. Admitted that, yeah. They always end up getting so upset they violate the rules, and I get them suspended. I don't know how that somehow is a bad thing, but me admitting that I was using their own techniques against them got me suspended as well, right, Chris? I mean, is that it?
That was it. There were people also piling on you. What happened was it was a coordinated attack against you. How they do it is there's one. You come back at one person, depending on who they are. And depending on what
brigade,
time it
yeah.
is, there'll be a plethora of followers just hammering at you saying,
A
"Oh,
lot of
that's
them are
racist."
bots. A
Yep.
lot of them are sock puppet accounts too.
Yep. Or they'll call you names. They'll say you're racist. They'll bait you into making fun of them again. All of a sudden, you make fun of them. You send I loved your monkey pictures, but they go to Twitter and
It really
say,
pisses them off. Yeah.
they go to Twitter
Dancing
and say,
monkeys.
but
You're
they go
all
to,
dancing monkeys. It really gets them upset.
but here's what
Man,
they do.
got-
They go to Twitter and say, "Oh my God, Tony, he's dehumanizing me." And then they say, "Oh, dehumanization. If you dehumanize somebody, that means we have to ban the person who did that." It goes back to, do you remember the mass crybabyism of the NPC meme, the NPC accounts, where all these people, a lot of people putting together NPC accounts and following these lefty Twitter accounts and kind of making fun of their inane rantings. All the backlash was they systematically cried, "You're dehumanizing us," and that was one of Twitter's rules: dehumanization.
Yeah. But on top of that, then, as Chris just pointed out, they had all these sock puppet, sock puppet. Am I saying it correctly? And bot accounts who would be involved in this brigade. And so this is what Musk knows. He knows this. He knows he sees all this. And so half the followers that the left has, I think, are all fake. And then what they would do then is suppress our side to show that we're not as popular. You're saying things that nobody wants to hear. So I would argue, well, my high was 136,000 followers at one point. I think it was double that. And I think that if my account is restored, I would probably have closer to 250,000. But that's what they do. They play this game of suppressing you and your speech, letting the left attack you rigorously and doing nothing to let it happen because it meets the same thing we just talked about regarding the federal bureaucracy, why things aren't enforced. It's the same thing. And so we see this in the micro where we're talking about my account and what happened, and the macro regarding the federal government and all the things that are not being enforced by DOJ. It's a pattern. It's like you all remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss builds this big mashed potato thing on his table. This means something. So
waste of food.
That was a waste of food. Anyway, this
by the way,
something.
There's another very important consequence that happens, which is that the good guys, someone's got to make a move, right? Either the bad guys have to become good or the good guys have to become bad. So what ends up happening is that the good guys become bad. Because if you're sitting here as a Republican and you feel like you're getting ripped off constantly by the thing, so eventually you say, all right, I guess two can play at the same game. So the Republicans always end up going down. I'm sure this is happening to everyone who has any right-wing connection. All these print little magazines that show up in your email. And it used to be like 10 years ago, I would get a lot of Republican-based things, and they were always well-written, well thought out, dignified presentation. Now they're all completely insane. It's like 10 different one of these, and when I hit unsubscribe, they just come back 3 of them in their place. And I don't know who's writing for these things. They can't spell. They don't know grammar, and every headline is misrepresenting, way exaggerating what actually is in the story. And so it's like, all right, if they're going to play disinformation, we're going to play disinformation. So it always comes down to the lowest common denominator, and we all lose.
Well, grammar triggers anxiety. Keep that in mind.
I think our side's become better at memeing, right, Chris? I mean, that's.
Yeah, the joke is the left can't meme, but
and they can't, man.
Right.
They can't. I mean, they suck.
A lot of their memes.
Mega MAGA. Are you kidding me? The MAGA King.
Well, it's ultra MAGA.
Ultra MAGA is like, what the hell y'all do? It's like, great. You spend all this money for us. What a great gift.
If I can jump in, there's an interesting piece here, and the problem is that even as our ability to pass data around and pass it around in truly tremendous numbers and at truly tremendous speeds has increased. I mean, let me parenthetically add, I was talking to my cable provider yesterday, and they want to upgrade me to a 900 megabyte per second bandwidth into my house.
Well, you need to for all those Mars missions you're going to be helping navigate.
Exactly. So, you know, just crazy amounts of raw data, most of it not of great value, but crazy amounts of data being moved around. But here's the thing. If you go back into the United States history, just 100 years, there wasn't a major city in the United States that didn't have half a dozen papers. There were all sorts of papers. There were all sorts of journals. There were all sorts of magazines, and nobody who was at all interested in anything going on in the world around him read only one paper. Everybody was reading multiple papers, and everybody. I mean, you know, the folks who were working, you know, cleaning the streets were reading multiple papers. Everybody read multiple papers. Now we have a situation in which there are hundreds of thousands, it seems, of sources out there, but people are reading a handful, and in fact, in some cases, only one or two sources of their news. And amazingly enough, usually that source of news for a large block of society is either Facebook or Twitter. And what happens, therefore, is that if someone can control Facebook or Twitter, they are controlling the information feed, if you will, to a sizable percentage of the population. And this is something that is a relatively new event. This is worse than where we were in the 1960s when we had three television stations to choose from: ABC, NBC, CBS. And the fact of the matter was that everybody listened to ABC, NBC, or CBS, but you also read the local newspaper, and there were two where I grew up, and you had a local television and radio stations that you listened to. You actually were getting more data, you were getting more stories into you, a more diverse point of view with three television stations than you were with, I now have, I think, 3,000 cable channels. and that therein lies the problem here. And Musk has put his, you know, publicly put his finger on what a whole bunch of people have already pointed their fingers on, is there is a very deliberate manipulation of that feed into these various social media platforms, where there's a very, very narrow straw into what the news stories that are actually being passed around. And it needs to be addressed. And arguably the best way to address it is through another controlled information avenue, and that is schools. Schools need to be, schools need to come back to the real world. But you look at what's going on. I was reading an article this morning about a teachers conference or some sort in, I believe it was Philadelphia. If it wasn't Philadelphia, don't hold it against me. In which they invited the teachers of the public schools to go to a conference on essentially perversion. And you know,
You mean a Democrat Party meeting? No, I can't say that.
Oh boy.
it was worse than that. It was worse. I mean, and you kind of sit there and scratch your head and wonder what in God's name has happened, where they're holding a discussion. They were holding discussions on BD and SM and you know, and how to enjoy it. This is for the teachers of a public school.
And here I was in the, here I
There's
was
a
in
lot
the
of
19,
this going on.
and here I was in the, here it was in the 1990s and early 2000s, hosting radio shows exposing the education system and the NEA for pushing things like invented spelling and
Ebonics.
what was the other? Well, what was the other one? Not just invented spelling.
Ebonics.
Invented grammar came after that.
Right.
Then it was if you correct students' spelling, it hurts their feelings. Then it was don't correct paper. The NEA actually issued a memo at the time saying don't correct kids' papers with a red pen because it's a sign of it's a sign that will trigger. I wouldn't say trigger anxiety, but it will scare them. Rather, use green pen to make them feel like they can move forward. It was a real mess. So I'm worried about that. I didn't dream that it would get this bad over the next couple of decades.
Well, but the point is, if you only move in one direction, it always gets this bad.
Well, we were
There's
laughed at.
there's no counter movement, and that's why the school boards is really the only weak spot. If you're a general designing a strategy, the only way to win any ground is through the school boards and through the parents getting involved on that. That's really the only place where they're a little bit exposed. They're trying to close it, but
Right, and the Department of Justice wanted to label them as terrorists.
exactly, because that's the last weak spot.
So no, I just think that we need to be recognizing the Twitter purchase by Musk is not simply. I'm not necessarily a fan of Musk. I think he's done some good things and bad things. He's got good and bad points, but he's completely correct in this aspect that Twitter became the commercial expression of the Marxist left, and they've manipulated numbers. They've lied. I can't believe that their CEO actually told Musk that there's less than 5% bots. That's going to be a provable lie. And by the way, that lie helps undermine value because Twitter's valuation, as I understand it, I'm not an economist or a Wall Street guy, but I do believe that their valuation is based on the number, quote unquote, number of real subscribers, right? Is that their standard?
Well, on the number and the potential number, but they're killing the potential also if it's not a fair game.
But if I can jump in there, is that's a key point here. Is it's not just the number of subscribers, it's all the data that they pass out as being legitimate data,
Right.
and you're now questioning all of that data. How many people in the United States really support, the actions of the school boards, for example, since we just brought that up, and you turn to platforms like the social media platforms, and you get these numbers. Well, what you're now seeing is that Musk is now questioning the very foundation of this whole song and dance, which is, are these numbers legitimate? All the numbers that you've been passed out, that have been passed out in the last 6 or 7 years on all sorts of things, on all sorts of social behavior and all sorts of trend lines, are they correct or are they all fabricated?
Thank you for watching this clip of our Ask Us Anything session, part of our Thought to Action series presented by the London Center for Policy Research. If you'd like to see the full Ask Us Anything session, enjoy exclusive content you won't see anywhere else, as well as sneak previews, and to ask your own questions, please become a member of our Patreon page, patreon.com/thoughttoaction. Members will enjoy more exclusive in-depth conversations, as well as panel discussions, and live streams are coming. Once again, thank you for being with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and make your day an excellent one.